This episode is another history interpretation. I did one a few episodes back and I actually broke it down to 3 parts. However, this is simply a client's history interpreted based off some answers that were provided to me from some questions that I asked. So I always work with people's history in the moment. I don't read up about them or do my research beforehand. What I do when I look through someone's history is I am cataloging through my brain and I'm trying to work out if their issues are physical, emotional, human, energetic, chakra, or dosha. And what I'm trying to do is bring the whole picture together so that someone can have a deeper understanding on what emotions might be storing in their body and manifesting in undesirable ways on a physical, mental, behavioral, and energetic level. So this is very individual. I want to remind you that it is not about the condition. It doesn't mean that because this person has got this condition that it's going to mean the same thing for you, because it is pulling on other presentations that is going on in their body. And as we know, we are all unique individuals. However, what I love in my groups is that when one person asks a question and they get coached, it is relatable in some way for someone else in the group. So I do hope you glean some insight into other ways that you can look at your health, especially if you are stuck. And this person I know has been getting treatment for quite a while for some of their health conditions. So I hope this reveals some insight for them and for you as well. Enjoy listening. Okay, let's dive into this history interpretation. So I'm going to read out the question and each answer. And I haven't had a read over this. I always do best when I'm in the moment. So I'm going to go through this. You'll work out how my brain operates when I am reading someone's history. I do the same when I'm listening to people as well. Only, of course, if they have given permission and they want me to dive in deeper. But what I do is help people work out if their issues are physical, emotional, human, energetic, chakra, or a dosha imbalance. And what I hope to do with this is create awareness as to what emotions might be present. And when the time is right, you are able to dive in deeper. So this is going on the podcast, but I'm going to speak as if I am delivering this to this person, but no names will be used. So the main concerns right now, physical, mental, or otherwise, there's an addiction to stress, hypervigilance at time, weight gain, and immune system issues. So addiction is something, as soon as I hear this, no matter what the addiction is, sex, drugs, alcohol, or stress, is that I see this as a behavioral manifestation, an undesirable behavioral manifestation that is a response to emotions that may be surfacing, and stress or engaging in stressful situations is simply the reaction. But what most people are desiring to do is to actually respond to life rather than react. When I hear the word addiction or I see that people are engaging in addictive behaviors, I immediately think of the sacral chakra, which governs relationships in life. So I'm going to assume that this is going to come up a little bit later, and I will dive into more details about the sacral chakra. Hypervigilance at times. So this would also be a behavior. I am going to add in a suggestion that hypervigilance can sometimes be controlling behavior, wanting to know everything that's happening with the people around you, your environment, your work, and almost filling the space and gap. And quite often when space and time is created, it can be incredibly uncomfortable, especially if you have been conditioned or used to operating at a go, go, go speed. And that can depend on your background, the work that you've been engaged in, or the work that you're currently engaged in. It can be conditioning and beliefs from parents that you've got to work hard to get results. Weight gain is one of the main concerns. So I will tend to look at this on a dosha and a chakra level. So there are some dosha types. This particular one is the kapha. So we have all three doshas, but someone who's got a higher percentage of kapha in their body dosha makeup is generally going to be more of a solid build. But they are ones who have a tendency to find it easier to gain weight and much slower to lose it. So I look at this in a dosha sense, particularly when someone has got more overall weight gain, more overall solid build to them. But if you're having issues with gaining weight in particular areas of the body, that is when I would look at the chakra and the location, and therefore find out, what is this weight protecting in terms of emotions? What is underlying that you want to pad up and not actually ready to access just yet? And there's been some really incredible experiences that I've had with clients. It's something that I just heard about for a long time, but then I got to experience it with clients, that they had done all the diets, they had done all the exercise and, you know, the calories in, calories out, and they would lose the weight, but they would gain it again, or they wouldn't lose it at all. And when we finally accessed the emotions that this weight was protecting, it all of a sudden just started to fall off and really support the diet, or they didn't even have to be on a diet, but it would support their diet, it would support their exercise. And likewise, their emotional state around their food and their exercise, they had a different relationship to it as well. And then on a deeper level, if you are that, I think you do have a high amount of kapha in your dosha type, because I have seen you. I would, with this, is find out why is it excess? So overall, why are you having this tendency to gain weight? So I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. I'm sure it'll come up in the history. And then immune system. In general, our immune system is always going to be active, but usually when people say I've got immune system issues, it's because they're getting sick all the time. And I hope that you're going to reveal what it is you're getting sick with, because again, I look at the location. Why is this location constantly getting affected? What emotions are underlying? Okay, the desires are to have peace, prosperity, vital health and wellness, and the balancing of my physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and financial self. Amazing. And I want to let you know that all of this is possible. A lot of this dives into energetics, and this is something that I've been talking a lot about, and even for myself, is that this world of energetics and seeing people who had achieved this life of peace and prosperity and vital health, I was like, how is this possible? But it is about this willingness to dive into this work on a deeper level and explore all of our deepest, darkest layers. And then the stuff that you desire starts to land. So I think it's really amazing that even though your body, your mental state may not necessarily be in the place you want it right now, as in you're experiencing discomfort and pain on a certain level, is that you still have the vision for a desire, so that you've got somewhere that you're trying to walk towards. And then there can be many bumps and many challenges along the way, but knowing that you will always get through it if you have this willingness and this knowing that you can actually manifest your desire. And then one day it starts to land and it's a really nice space to be. But energetics is really embodiment. It's not a strategy. Okay, so list out physical issues that you have: body pains, injuries, past injuries. There is kyphosis listed, which is excess curvature of the thoracic spine. So this would be like someone leaning forwards. A torn left calf, intermittent lower back pain, low energy and chronic sinus issues, which I assume is the immune issue. All right, so let's go through each of these and unpack them. And as you're listening, I think it's a great idea if you just note down any memories, events, or people that might come up for you, because eventually if you have methods of processing your emotions, then this is what I suggest you do, is that you start processing your emotions and go into these layers. But many of these are going to be the same issue playing out in different ways, your body trying to communicate to you to learn some sort of lesson, process some sort of emotion, and have some sort of realization. So kyphosis of the thoracic spine, that curvature, I associate that kind of posture with someone who has a tendency to be depressed. So physical body can influence your emotional state, but likewise emotional state can influence your physical body. So if I was to walk around in a kyphotic posture all day, my mood would probably start to get low. My energy would shift. And that's why when we see people out and about, we judge them so much by their posture and therefore the energy that they're emitting. Now, if it's postural kyphosis, then I would be wondering, okay, well, what is your history? Why is it that your body has developed this way? A lot of people say it's things like genetics, but then we also can mimic behaviors of our parents. The other thing is, depending on how much physical therapy you've had, is that you may have been told and labeled that you've got a kyphotic thoracic spine when in fact it's actually normal. What I'm more interested in is your spine and the joints functioning well, or do you have restriction there? All right, on to the next one is a torn left calf muscle. So I love that you said left, because I look at the sides when we have two sides, left being feminine, right being masculine. The calf area for me is part of the base chakra, and it really relates to your sense of belonging in this world, your sense of belonging in your community and the relationships that you have with people. So finding your place and knowing your place. And base chakra has a lot to do with our sense of survival, our foundations and values, and sense of grounding of where we are in the physical world. So the left side, I would say, is around feminine, which I always say is intuition, creativity, and emotional expression. There are many other feminine energetic qualities, but these are the easiest for people to usually grasp in this context. So I'd be saying left calf, there's something around belonging, and there's something around using your intuition, your creativity, and your emotional expression. And I'll just see how that lands. All right, intermittent lower back pain. So the lower back is a really unique cross between the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus in terms of chakras. Regardless of that, if you don't understand chakras, I call it financial lower back pain. And there's already been mention that there is a desire to have balancing of financial self. So I very much see money as an energetic byproduct of what I do. And it flows depending on the vibration and frequency that I'm operating at and the work that I do and the energy that I have behind it. So financial lower back pain, that can come up in relationships where you might be the breadwinner or you might be dependent. It can come up a lot when relationships are going their separate way. So just separating, or it can be the separation of a marriage contract, commitment, and fear of where is my money going to come from, especially if you were the financially dependent person in the relationship. And that's why a lot of people will stay in relationships, because of financial dependency. But it has a lot to do with contracts in life. You can think of many contracts. Most people are going to think of employment contracts, self-contracting contracts, self-employment. And we know that with employment and self-employment, there's definitely different personality types that can tolerate one or the other. And a lot of this has to do with base chakra and sense of security, which is a basic human need. So some people don't mind the risk of being a self-employed person or a contractor, not knowing when the next paycheck is coming. But energetically, if you're aligned and you're doing the work that you love, the money's always going to come. And then there are some people who desire security. And I would say that some of this is conditioning, but some of this is based on where you're at in life as well, whether or not you want employment. But when redundancies happen, every time there's a global financial crisis or with the pandemic recently, is that we know that employment is not in fact secure. So Lower back pain on the financial level, is there what's going on with contracts within work? What's going on with your relationship contracts? What is your role in your relationship around responsibility, bringing in money? And how stable do you feel around the income that you're making and the level of trust that you have with it? So financial lower back pain, it doesn't matter if you've got millions of dollars or if you've got $100, because it's subjective how much money one needs and what lifestyle they want to sustain. So it's all about that security and stability and trust in self, your ability to create the income. So I've talked with different words about the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus there. The base is, do you have the security and stability to generate income? Sacral is, do you have the creativity for the ideas and to use your intuition to create the income? And solar plexus, because the lower back is a unique mix of these three chakras, is, are you able to show up and express yourself and see your worth and your value in what you do and create income? So again, money to me is an energy. It is a need at a certain level, but once our needs are met and we can survive, anything beyond that is bonus money. And it does operate at a frequency. This is a whole different topic. So low energy. Now, low energy, I often attribute, if there are no other sort of medical conditions that might be contributing, is that low energy, I usually say, are you doing what you love? And I think that this is always going to evolve over a period of time of what we love and what we're passionate about, because as we express ourselves, we realize more of what's available. So where is this low energy coming from? Is it your dosha nature and a tendency to go into spaces of low energy or depressive states? Or is it low energy because you're not really feeling aligned with your values? You're not feeling aligned with what it is you're presenting to the world and how you're showing up. So there can be people that I interact with where my energy is not amazing. It's just on the wrong vibration. We're not on the same page. And that's okay. They are where they're at and I am where I'm at. And I'm going to find my people that I enjoy hanging out with, that I can have great conversations with. So this does depend a lot about who are you surrounded by, but also low energy dips are inevitable. And it's all about who are you in these low energy dips and, what are the layers that you want to explore. All right, chronic sinus issues. So I'm on video as well. So these podcasts often get turned into video on YouTube. Is chronic sinuses. You have sinuses here next to your nose in that cheek area, and you have sinuses here. Now, location hasn't been specified, but both of these are different. So sinus issues next to the nose in the cheek area. This area of your face represents emotions. So I would say, okay, there's some emotional stuff going on. And it's also in the solar plexus area, which is all about identity, trust, self-esteem, confidence, self-expression. And then on an energetic level, power, authority, and ego. So just note, if anything comes up for you, any memories or anything that just arouses in you as I say that. So I'd be looking at that level. There's a chakra and there's a dosha explanation here. Then if you have the sinus issues in between your eyebrows or just above your eyebrows, this is the brow chakra. And this is all about the ability to see more than what you just visually see, and the ability to hear just what you are hearing. So I'm reading the words that you've written here, but I'm looking beyond these words and understanding the energy of these words on a physical, emotional, human, energetic, chakra and dosha level. So the brow chakra is all about the ability to see. It's about using intuition, which we've already mentioned with the left calf, feminine. It's about the ability to trust and use your intuition. And it's big on knowledge. So knowing that the knowledge you have consumed is enough. And when people get out of balance with the brow chakra, they will consume knowledge thinking that if I know this, if I get this qualification, if I get this certification, then people will see my value. But the truth is that you're not necessarily seeing your value if you've got sinus issues in this brow chakra area in between the eyebrows, is that you're not seeing your own value. So therefore other people don't see your value. It's not about how much knowledge you consume. And when the brow chakra is in balance, if your sinuses are related to a chakra issue, then it's trusting that you know what you know and you can teach what you know right now, and that you've always got more to learn. So I always ask people that when they go to consume knowledge or go and do a course, is do it for themselves because of a personal interest and not for anyone else. So I talked about getting the sinus issues across the nose and cheek area, and then in the brow area, and what these can represent on a chakra level. But you may not relate to the chakra explanation, but there is a dosha explanation. And again, as I said, I have seen a picture of you, and I do feel like that, well, right now you've got a kapha imbalance, but I would question whether or not your normal constitution has got a high level of kapha. So when a kapha dosha gets out of balance or excess for anyone, but someone who's got high kapha is going to go into this more easily, is that this dosha governs structure, earth, and fluid mechanics, water. So earth, water, structure, and fluid mechanics. So when the kapha gets excess, and there's a number of things that can trigger this emotionally and environmentally, is that they tend to be the mucousy type people and fluidy type people. So they'll get the cankles, they'll get the swollen joints after a short plane ride, they'll experience fluid retention. When they get sick, they tend to have the phlegm and the wet cough and the sniffly nose. When they emotionally release, they're just snot and tears everywhere, and they feel like the tap won't turn off if they start crying. So this often stops the kapha person from actually diving into their emotional issues and processing them, because they're like, I don't want to open Pandora's box because honestly, it's going to be endless. But I promise you it will end. You might cry every day for a few weeks or a year, but it is going to end. So when the kapha gets in excess, sinus issues can be a real problem. And I definitely would be looking at the dosha and the chakra level if there's been a lot of medications, a lot of treatments. Maybe you've had your sinuses scraped out surgically and it just keeps on coming back. So my desire would be that you go and explore these avenues, process your emotions that are coming up, maybe look at balancing your dosha. I'll go through this in a bit, not necessarily the balancing, but just more on the kapha dosha. And see if you can remedy this. So one thing that I'll say about doshas is that they're highly influenced by the environment that you're in. So if it's true that your kapha is in excess right now on a dosha level, then being in wet and cold environments is going to flare your sinus issues up. So this can be challenging when we go through different seasons, depending on where you live. But notice if you get a lot worse when you are in a damp environment and a cold environment. So where I live, it's dry, very dry. Even in winter, I would say it's dry with snow, but we can have our wet, rainy days. So what are some things that lets you know that you've got this kapha dosha in a high amount is that your personality is probably that you love to support others. But the danger is that you do this at the expense of your own energy, which might be contributing to your low energy. It's probably one of the biggest demons of the kapha dosha, the high kapha dosha personality type, is that they really struggle to ask for support. What else is there? On a rainy day, they tend to complain about the rain. I love rainy days. I'm not a high kapha at all. I love rainy days, but the kapha's like, man, would this rain just stop? So I just want to create a little bit of awareness. Again, there's many layers to the doshas, but create a little bit of awareness around your environment and see if you notice any sensitivities to this. So I've given you an idea about the chakras and the emotions that might be contributing to your sinus, and then the doshas. You may relate to both of them, and it means you have got to work on both of these, but you may not relate to one and relate to the other. So this is where it starts to hone in. What sort of therapy investigations have you sought out or currently undertaking? So you've gone through plant medicine journeys, breath work, psychotherapy, somatic therapy, couples therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I think all of these are amazing, and a lot of it does depend on the practitioner that you've seen. The plant medicine practitioners are all going to be different. Every breathwork practitioner is going to have their own view. Same with the psychotherapy, somatic therapy, couples therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I would say that all of these met a need at a time, and there may be going to be bits that you didn't like, but I would just remain open to working with these people in the future, not necessarily the same therapist, but therapists that you really align with, that you like their energy, you feel like you're attracted to them, and trust that they're going to be able to serve you on a deeper level. So not necessarily that this is the case, but you may have had some good experience in psychotherapy, but some elements that you didn't like, but a different psychotherapist that you really resonate with. At this point in time, with the work that you've done, you might gain something new. And I think you're of this mindset. You know that, you're full of curiosity and there is always something new to learn. Okay, family history is there's diabetes and neurological issues. So with this one, I'm always just more curious as to someone's attitude around these disease states. Now, I know that you know about epigenetics, which is the genes can get passed on, but they don't need to be turned on. And of course, we get born into this life with our own path. So yes, there can be things that are very hereditary and the genes get turned on, but it really depends on our environment, the stress, physical, mental, emotional, environmental, whether or not these genes are going to get turned on. I'm also curious with family history if there's been any deaths, and therefore the relationship that you have to these people and how the death may have affected you. But there's not much else apart from the diabetes and neurological. Actually, what I will say is if you notice that perhaps your family members who have diabetes are also of the kapha dosha, this is relevant. Thank you for mentioning this. Diabetes is the medical predisposition for someone who is of a kapha dosha type. So particularly type 2 diabetes, which is more of that weight-related, late onset diabetes. So when the kapha dosha gets out of balance, there's going to be early signs, and maybe the sinusitis is a very early sign of things that could potentially roll out. And that's why I love to use doshas, is they let me know the medical predispositions for an individual based on how they're presenting to me. And then we want to prevent things like diabetes. So what would be an indication that this person's heading to diabetes? Maybe there's sugar and there's a little bit of insulin resistant stuff going on blood tests. And so is that enough of a sign for someone to start working on themselves? Sometimes it's not, and they wait till they get the diabetes and then they turn their life around. Now, this is more talking about type 2 diabetes, not type 1 diabetes, although there are some amazing things you can do for type 1 diabetes if you catch it early enough. So, all right, if there is this strong kapha dosha trait going on in the family, are you starting to mirror some of the behaviors, the postures, the weight stuff, and the emotional behaviors that is maybe sending you down this similar pathway? So yeah, we want to take note that if there is a strong family history of diabetes and you've already got some of this kapha stuff going on, it's where you could head, but let's prevent it. So you don't take any medications, supplements, too many to list right now. All right, so this is really interesting. I love supplements at certain times, but I think that supplements can almost be treated like medications. and supplements are often easier to take than doing the deeper work. Now, again, this is individual, but when someone tells me I've got too many or I'm rattling that I take so many, it's probably a sign that they're not really enjoying having to take that many. So supplements are valuable, but what is the intention? Deep down inside, are you looking at it for a quick fix, or are you looking at it to support your body whilst you do the deeper work? So if I use the example of anxiety or depression and someone's at a crisis point, it may be that bad that they need to be conventionally medicated. But what I would love is that they medicate themselves, they get the pain shifting, they can regulate themselves a little better, and then they start to do the deeper work and wean off it. Now, if someone's not at that crisis point and you catch them a little bit earlier, then you can definitely take herbs and supplements and natural things to support mood. But everything's going to have its threshold. And again, what is the intention? And do you really feel like these supplements are doing anything? Because there are some people, no matter how good the supplement is, they just won't take it because there's no emotional connection to it. And sometimes we have to go and spend thousands of dollars of money on supplements to realize that actually this isn't the answer. So I think that supplements can be minimized. And this is where I see a lot of people, there's a lot of amazing naturopaths and functional medicine doctors out there. But as I said, within professions, there are all different types of personalities and different ways that people will like to operate, is that even though it's natural, even though it's herbal, you can still get into the trap of being prescribed stuff for symptoms. And based on results, we'll treat with this. And some practitioners can get very protocol-based rather than individual-based. So to really be looking into that relationship with supplements, and it's not unusual for people that I work with that they do the emotional work and they're like, I really don't need to do this. I'm just ready to break up with my supplements. Or they actually find that their test results have shifted. Even after months of taking these supplements, they've shifted rapidly within a period of time and they don't have to take them anymore. Okay. So trauma, I said car accidents, broken bones. The answer is no, but this is a subjective question. So I'll elaborate on this from my perspective, and assumptions on this answer is that, yes, if people talk about their accidents and their broken bones, it's more, are they having chronic issues with it? What is their relationship with that accident? For a car accident, was it that you were hit by a drunk driver and there's a lot of blame? Was somebody killed in that accident? I'm just pulling on a number of scenarios that I know of. If you broke your wrist and it's fine, then we won't worry about it. But it's more if you've had these accidents and maybe multiple accidents in different shapes, ways, or forms that affect the same area. I say that there's some sort of lesson ingrained in that body part. No hospitalizations. Okay, then on to the body systems. So gut, I ask about bowel motions, frequency, consistency, is there constipation and diarrhea? So this is fluctuating. So fluctuates between constipation and diarrhea, I think, is that I find that when people are doing this deeper work, they become more sensitive and aware as to how their body is responding. So gut motions, bowel movements is a physiological response. And when people are doing deep emotional work, there are some people that are going to have a very clear physiological response that results in their bowels moving. So I've worked with people who are very constipated, who all of a sudden start having multiple bowel movements a day and they're really satisfying. And it's so linked with them doing emotional processing. So constipation is like, what are you holding on to? What don't you want to let go of? And of course, it's related a little bit with diet and fluids, et cetera, and exercise and movement. But if you've tried that, what are you holding on to? Diarrhea is like, I've got to get this out. When we have diarrhea due to food poisoning, it's like there is a toxin in there and I need to purge it. So when you have constipation diarrhea, it's sometimes we're just so full with our emotional cup that all we realize is, oh my gosh, I'm constipated. Oh my gosh, I've got diarrhea and my bowel motions aren't great. But then we forget, what is the lead up? What is the environment and situations that we've been around that have perhaps triggered my body to respond this way? So if you can start to take note of, right, I'm experiencing constipation or diarrhea, whatever it is, abnormal bowel motions, What has just gone on in my life the last few days? All right, moving on to genitourinary. There is nothing here. So for females, it would be periods, and males, it is about bladder infections, any testicular stuff going on. So there's nothing here. No cardiovascular issues, respiratory, so chronic sinusitis for the majority of my life. So when we've had something that's a chronic issue, one, we start to think it's normal, or we can't really remember the onset. But majority of my life, I would encourage you to think back to when did it start and what was going on in your life at this period of time that maybe trigger the sinusitis. So I talked a bit about the chakra stuff, solar plexus and the brow chakra. Was anything related to this kind of thing, solar plexus and brow chakra, going on back then when the chronic sinusitis triggered? Then was there any shifts in your environment and different climate that perhaps triggered this as well? Now, the other thing that I get people to do, if you want to like take a pause and try this out, is sinusitis can be pretty painful or uncomfortable, or just this awareness that everything is stuffed up and blocked up and mucousy. So when people are like, I'm not relating to any of the stuff that you're talking about, I go, okay, well, you've obviously got an issue and you want some help. Well, hopefully you want some help with this, is tune into the sensation in your body. So close your eyes down, tune into your sinuses. So this is where I would lead someone, but often it's just go wherever your mind takes you. Tune into your body, tune into the sinus area and notice the sensation. And as you tune into the sensation and allow it to be there, who or what comes up for you? Who comes up for you? What memory? What event? And trust it even if it doesn't make sense. And this is the thing that you then start to peel away the layers on and process emotions on. I teach people the release process, but there are many ways to process your emotion. And then it's just making the decision, are you ready to go there? Sometimes it's so scary. So you go with that. That is the emotion, that is the event that's been stored in your body that's manifesting as this undesirable for this physical and physiological manifestation. Onto diet, any intolerances, dairy. So if you are in excess with kapha, then dairy is very like humid, damp, and mucus inducing. So a lot of people know this, but you also think of cheese, it's moldy. So depending on the level of caffeine you've got in you, you might find that dairy does not sit very well with you at all. Or you can only have very, very minor amounts. So it may increase your mucus, but it might also affect your bowels. All right, have you ever smoked? Volcano vape occasionally, but very rarely, and no, not a smoker. So then I would be asking, I don't actually know what volcano vape is, but I know what vaping is why do you enjoy doing this? What are the feelings that it gives you? And yeah, what are the emotions that it gives you? Is it a suppressant? Is it to keep you busy? What is the reason? What is the intention? Okay, do you drink alcohol? And I always want to know how often. So rarely, less than once per month. So if I was working with you, I would probably elaborate on that. And I'd just be curious, what is your reason for drinking once per month? Have you had a history of heavy drinking at all? Sometimes there's stuff and it's just like, there's nothing there, let's move on. Drugs. Have you had a history of drug use or currently using drugs? No. Weight. So 6 foot and 225 pounds, which I believe in our metric system or measurement system is 100 kilos or so, but 225 pounds. And you have said that you have an issue with your weight. So if I go into weight a little bit more, I talked about it can be location wise and what are you protecting? What is the quality of the fat and the sensitivity there? Then it can be dosha, if you are that high kapha, or you have an excess of the kapha dosha right now, because someone might not have very much, but then they can just blow it out completely, is why is this weight being gained? What is the emotional root of it? Because the kapha person will tend to eat their emotions as well. It comes up, it's uncomfortable, let's stuff it down with food. So a lot of emotional eating. Other qualities I'll mention of the kapha is they tend to stay in jobs and relationships too long. They stay in low levels of discomfort for fear of going into discomfort and ultimate breakthroughs. They'd rather stay comfortable, uncomfortable. All right. So weight, the other thing is, what is the relationship with your weight? How do you feel about your body when you look at your body? And the other thing is 6 foot, 225 pounds. It is also, I will sometimes look at someone's body because there can be dysmorphia around it. It's like, I don't like this, I don't like that. But actually, to me, you might look completely normal and healthy. So what is your relationship with your body? Have you been told anything historically about your weight to make you fear weight? What are your beliefs and conditioning around this? And why is it that you desire to lose weight? And as a result of losing the weight and appearing a certain way and feeling a certain way, what is it that you think you're going to get as a result of losing weight? Because when you lose massive amounts of weight, physical body influence emotional state, is that you can find that you really are a different person. And then when you know your dosha type as well, you will kind of get a better idea of what a healthy weight is. Because a lot of kapha dosha, not that you're just one dosha, a lot of people who have a high amount of kapha, they're usually the ones that, because of all the marketing and campaigning out there, they're probably the most unhappy with their weight and they want to be skinny, they want to be ripped, but actually they don't look normal when they are like this. They look better with a little bit of a layer on them and that more solid build. All right, sleep pattern varies because we have a 1-year-old son. I would say we are both in a sleep death. Death. Okay, so yeah, all right, so sleep, I think is a basic need. And gosh, there are so many layers to this when I think about sleep, and having had my daughter as well, is sometimes we can also really work ourselves up around why we're not getting sleep as well. And that level of irritation can play on the fatigue and our energy, because most people have experienced not getting much sleep, but still having all the energy. So this is like, what were you doing? Why were you able to not have much sleep? So an example can be when you're with a new partner, it's like, I don't care about sleep and I'm just like ready to go the next day. But then all of a sudden, having a baby, a toddler, a child in your life, it can be such a massive shift in dynamics on all levels, including relationship and the life that you once had and the sleep that you once had. Kaphas love to have their sleep. You interrupt them, they wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you know about it the whole day. But one thing that I learned in Vipassana meditation is that you could sleep 1 hour a night, but if the rest of the time you were in a meditative state, you're actually getting the deep rest. So I think the relationship, and just like the relationship you might have with your body around weight, and the relationship and belief you have around this lack of sleep, can exacerbate the symptoms. And there are definitely personality types that do better with more sleep and cope with less or more sleep better than others. So yes, sleep deprivation can be a thing with a new child. It also doesn't have to be a thing, and it just depends where you want to put your focus. But feeling tired, sleep is a basic need. So this can tick one over into a bit of survival mode, where all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I can't cope with the emotions and the pain. Our pain threshold to physical pain, emotional pain, goes down when our sleep is compromised. And then, of course, hormones, satiety, eating cycles, etc., all get affected. So yeah, I would encourage, it can seem very unproductive, but catching up on sleep, we often think that it's going to take days, but it really doesn't. And it is very feminine energy to allow ourselves to nap and get out of that sleep death state. But I hope you are able to get on top of this. All right, exercise. What do? Absolutely, cardiovascular and body weight, strength training 3 to 5 times a week, and also paddleboarding, standing. Cool. And I'm all about do exercise that you find fun, that you desire to do. Now, I have just made an assumption that you're Kapha, and when Kaphas train in the gym, they will just bulk up rather than getting that real ripped and toned. So they just get big. This is just another indication for you. However, if I just ignore the doshas and chakra stuff, is always choose exercise that you enjoy, be open to evolving it. And again, what is the deeper reason as to why you're doing the exercise? I think that's really good to always know. What are your energy levels like? Very low unless I have caffeine. So a warning with this is if you are responding to caffeine, great. But if you then start to rely on caffeine, which means taking more and more, and it's not working, you can really stress your adrenals out. So to the point where caffeine just doesn't have the hit on them anymore. And your adrenal glands your stress glands then can influence so many other hormonal cascades on many, many different levels. So I would also say, is the caffeine an addiction? Is it the taste? I mean, everyone will metabolize caffeine differently as well. There are some people that cannot tolerate it at all. It sends them through the roof. And other people, they can have it and they can sleep, etc. So what is your relationship with the caffeine? And are there other things that you could do that maybe just are a little bit harder to do? All right, current stress levels, fluctuating from extreme to low. So what I love about the emotional work is it is about connecting you with what is your soul purpose, what is your desires that you would love to manifest. And if we stay very rooted in this vision and feel very connected with what our purpose is, and perhaps on a soul level, if you're there, is that it makes it easier to overcome the challenges that may be associated with higher levels of stress. So it really is about learning to embrace stress, because stress is actually what makes life fun. It's what increases our resilience and lets us know that we can keep on going. If we actually had a stress-free life, it gets very boring. If you've got a lot of painful stress right now, you won't believe that. But yeah, some people can only sit in nothing happening for a few days before they go and seek the stress, the addictive nature that you've noticed, or filling the gap with busyness. So depending on your job and what you do, there can be very fluctuating levels of stress. And there is also what I would suggest is really look at it. And this is where having someone external can be really helpful, is what stress is actually essential and what could you let go of? Where do your priorities need to lie? And where are you creating stress for yourself just for the sake of creating stress? And why do you create stress? So I talked earlier about the addictive nature, addicted to stress. This is usually rooted in something around relationships. I wouldn't say it's necessarily your current relationship, but sacral chakra is about relationships with parents, grandparents, extended family, siblings, past relationships that you've had. Like, what are the patterns that are playing out? What are the belief systems that have been ingrained or that you've been conditioned to that you can make a choice to change? And yeah, what levels of stress are you attracting based on the lifestyle or the work that you choose to do? And do you need to reassess this? Do you need to make some changes? Do you desire to make some changes? Because when we have that desire that's really rooted on something deeper and it really means something to ourselves, that's what helps us keep on moving forwards in that direction to achieve our desires, manifest our desires. Okay, what are your mood tendencies? I have a tendency towards rumination. Good word. I also have a tendency towards hypervigilance. So rumination is a kapha excess manifestation mentally. They ruminate on their thoughts. And I'll find that when I'm talking to a kapha, they're often like digesting it for ages. I'm like, what do you have to say? Like, I want to hear what you have to say. So I teach people a verbal dialogue process to process their emotions. So it is really important that they use their voice. So many kaphas like to journal and write things down, but never speak things out loud. Your voice has a vibration and a frequency that can transmute things. So I'm really big on get the stuff out of your mind, and it might be writing notes, it might be journaling, especially if a verbal dialogue process around processing your emotions is too much, then I suggest that you read out what you journal. Get the thoughts out of your head, because that starts to put it in process of transformation and help you realize if you want to do something with these thoughts or if they are useful thoughts. I'm all about creating space and what is it that I want planted in my mind, because the things and the seeds that we plant in our mind, that's what's going to manifest. So I don't really want to put ill intentions in my mind. A tendency towards hypervigilance. So look, we all have a different context around words, but I think of this as controlling. I think of this as a little bit of perfectionism. Hypervigilance can also sometimes be a little bit OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And I look at this as a behavioral manifestation. So I wouldn't actually be focusing on the hypervigilance. It's great that you're aware about it. You've got to make a decision that you want to change it. But sometimes we have these undesirable behaviors, which can be because of our dosha makeup. It's in our nature, it's in our tendency, and we can bring ourselves back into balance to help that. But it can also be because of chakras and the emotions that we're storing as a result of experiences that we've had in our life. So instead of focusing on how can I change the hypervigilance, I say it's easier. It's simple. It's not easy to process your emotions. And then naturally you might notice that the hypervigilant tendencies and behaviors just drop off, but you've got to go and find out. So your work, what do you do? What would you do differently? I love what I do in the world, but I desire deeply more support and a larger team. So I think it's amazing to put the desires out there. And then the key with a desire, from my experience, is to take the next steps. So sometimes we desire things and it's like, but actually I'm not putting this into action. I'm not actually putting a request out there for more support. And I do think that there is a high kapha or kapha excess going on here because of all the words that you're using. I desire support, but this is one of the hardest things for a kapha to ask for. And have that desire, but recognize where you're not then following through, perhaps with the actions that allow that desire to manifest. Sometimes, yeah, there are amazing things that we just think and it comes to fruition, but then there are other things that are going to require, so desire is feminine energy, then it requires masculine energy and action and something to happen to make it come to fruition. So I desire a larger team. What would support make me feel like? This is a question for you. Why do I desire more support? And what will a larger team give me? So another thing that kaphas like is they love a tribe. They love a community and they love to feel supported because they are so good at supported, but deep down inside, they desire to be supported. So I would encourage you, like, have you taken the steps to attract a team? And you may make some mistakes along the way of bringing team on that you're going to have to let go. And this is going to be, if you are kapha, high kapha in your dosha type, is you are going to have to be good at letting people go, because you may keep people on out of deep loyalty, but actually they're hurting your business and it's just not in alignment. So it does require a different level when you start to bring team on and employ people or have contractors working with you. Emotional history. Okay. Significant memories that stay with me or of my mother being carried out of the house on a stretcher when I was 10 years old or so. And various fights with my father as a teenager that left a wound on my sensitive heart. I also had many sinus surgeries during my teenage years. Okay, so you have had sinus surgeries. So on these, thank you for sharing. Significant memories that stay with me or my mother being carried out of the house on a stretcher when I was 10 years old or so. So when I teach people to process their emotions, I ask them to go back to, in your case, to be that 10-year-old who probably didn't have a voice or maybe was in a bit of a state of shock or whatever was going on for you and couldn't express the emotions at the time. And there is a series of prompts of where you would actually give your 10-year-old a voice and take yourself back to that event as long as it's not too traumatic. And you would say all of the things that you want to say. Now, as a 10-year-old, you may not have ever had those words, but you're giving words and experience to that 10-year-old and letting them get it out. Because, you know, when someone's been carried out on a stretcher, sometimes the attention is not on you, it's on the person. And there is a lot of stuff going on with it, not a lot of explanation and understanding. And what you could do is, I'm not going through details of the release process, but your mother wasn't able to speak to you on the stretcher, but have her speak back to you, any of the ambulance people, your father. What are the things that you needed to hear? And this is where a lot of inner child healing can come up as well, or younger self. So younger self is your 10-year-old self, inner child healing is your 10-year-old self, is what was the support that the younger you, the 10-year-old you, did not have? And support is quite a theme that's sort of come up. I just know from hearing the words that I've said, is what is the support that you desire to have that wasn't able to be given to you, or people, your parents didn't know how to give that to you? And what are some questions that you had that you can now answer? And the thing is that memories that we have are accumulation of memories, because this may not affect someone, but it affects you. And this is subjective, so you get to work on it. And I often find that people will tell me a story or they will write something down and I say, great, let's go into a release process and do this. Because when you're in it, you get the most amazing answers and realizations and shifts that you didn't realize. So what you're telling me right now is very much coming from a cognitive space. And then I would be so fascinated to find out what actually comes up when you go into a process around this. So various fights as a teenager. Now, the solar plexus develops from the age of 15 to 22. It doesn't mean that only solar plexus issues are going to come to fruition because of things that happened when you were 15 to 22. But I talked about the solar plexus with your sinuses because if you're like next to your nose is affected. And also with the work that I have a bit of an idea that you're doing, like you really have to show up. You've got to express yourself. And I think you're an amazingly curious person. So you would be processing and all of these fights with your father. And, you know, the fights that you were having, you were probably coming from your very protective space versus the heart space. And in the way that I teach people to process their emotions, you have an opportunity to open your heart and come from your heart space. And it doesn't have to involve the person in real life, but it may lead to some key conversations. So yeah, you'd be processing those fights and conversations that you had with your dad. And this can help your current relationship, if he's still in the physical world, to go a level deeper. And then, of course, you as a father yourself now, is that, you know, sometimes there can be a lot of realizations as you go through this journey yourself, as your child gets older. And then many sinus surgeries during my teenage years. So with emotional history, a lot of people, they'll just jot things down. And then as we end up working together, more and more stuff comes up. But it's always interesting to see what is prominent for someone. You know, sinus surgeries. And I know now, many years, decades on, you've still got this sinus issue. So how did you feel about the sinus surgery? Because surgery can be highly traumatic for some people. For others, it's just like, yeah, I did it, but it didn't work. So again, who was involved? What was the level of care, support? Did you feel like you were going in there well informed? What were your expectations and the reality of what has happened? Okay, your current relationship status or anything that you might be working through. My current relationship has extreme peaks and valleys, highs and lows. I'm going to say they are working through an avoidant personality and attachment style. I am working through an anxious personality and attachment style. It manifests in extreme at times. So yeah, I've heard of these different attachment styles in relationships, and I love different personality profiling. I mean, that's where I use the doshas, sometimes go into love languages, which is very basic. And yeah, there's lots of cool personality tests out there. And if they're working for you, great. And I always say that this work starts with understanding yourself first, and then you are able to understand others, and to be able to show up in the relationship in the least triggered space possible. Now, our relationships, especially our close ones and our safe ones, can trigger the hell out of us. And this is where there are lessons, there are opportunities, there are soul contracts to be resolved in this lifetime. But to truly help someone else in that dynamic, it's understanding yourself first. And I never know that when someone comes to me in a relationship or not in a relationship, where they're going to end up. But my desire is that you do the deep work and your decisions come from a very grounded and conscious place and from a place of love as to where are you heading in this relationship. And as I said, bringing a child into the world can extremely change relationship dynamics and trigger stuff that you didn't even know was there to be worked on. So your child is your little trigger, your little lesson and opportunity that reveals stuff that you weren't aware of. So yeah, and I think it is also great to start to understand others, but to always understand ourselves first. That's when we can step into our power and help ourselves and ultimately help the other person in a relationship. Concerns or desires around intimacy. I battled a 20+ year pornography addiction, which I feel now is course corrected, but at times I desire more intense sex where they want more slower lovemaking. Intimacy for me has always been a deep learning curve because it was not something that my family ever really talked about. And they definitely did not model intimacy with each other. Non-sexual, of course, is what I mean. Okay. Yeah, so addiction comes up again. So whenever I describe addiction as a undesirable manifestation, I say sex, drugs, alcohol, pornography, shopping, gear. It is addiction to anything, really. And this is course corrected, but you desire intense sex. Now, yes, there is like a whole energy behind sex, and this comes back to the sacral chakra, which is around the hip and pelvic area, and it includes the genitals as well and the inner thigh. The inner thigh and the genital area, it really is like the sexuality, the intimacy, the sensuality, and the femininity in males and in females. So, and you know, there is an energy to all of this. So I would come back to exploring things around the sacral chakra, like you mentioned that it wasn't really modeled for me by my family. So you have to go out and learn about it from other people. And it's a deep learning curve for you. It's great to know what you desire, but then again, it's coming back to what am I working on? What is this other person working on? And if I come back to the real basics of love languages, which I think you will be familiar with, is that sometimes we become very demanding around what we want, but also it gets to be reciprocated. So sometimes it doesn't meet the other person's needs, but where can I meet the other person's needs? And then the action is reciprocated. So intimacy and sexuality comes up a lot for me. I usually work with people one-to-one over a few months, and it usually comes up in the last handful of weeks, because I do feel the energetics of the sacral chakra is sex, money, and power, relationship with all of these. And sexual energy is just a huge topic, but it's often something, the energetics gets to be experienced, gets to be felt, gets to be embodied as a result of clearing space. So this is something that I say can start to shift, in your relationship will shift, and your understanding around it will shift as a result of processing the emotions that you seem to be storing in your body that are manifesting in certain undesirable ways. So you know what it wants to look like, but you're sitting in a bit of pain of things not working the way you desire right now, or you have an awareness of what it is you desire. But the missing piece for me and how I approach things is processing emotions. And then naturally things will unfold. Sometimes they don't naturally unfold, and you do all the emotional, energetic work, and then it's making some, it is having a bit of a strategy or making decisions of some effort that you might reciprocate. And then do you have the energy to put this effort in to make changes? Okay. So any significant historical relationships, unrequited love or affairs. I have always been the one to break up in relationships 9 times out of 10. 3 serious relationships. I've been in my current relationship for 3 years, and we have a 1-year-old together. Okay, so this is really interesting. When I read that, I immediately think of the heart chakra. And you've also talked about having a sensitive heart when you were having fights with your dad. So when the heart chakra is out of balance, there is a bit of a connection issue. And behaviorally, what I notice is that these people will often break up their relationships first so that they don't get broken up with, and then have the feelings of abandonment and rejection. So as I say that, I would want you to think about, well, what comes up when I say abandonment and rejection? This is so subjective to you. You're going to have a different context around these words. But there is a very strong link between the heart chakra and the sacral chakra. I've done a whole podcast on it. So usually the heart chakra will hold negative space emotions around hatred, resentment, injustice, betrayal, jealousy. And it usually has to do with someone that is in your relationship space, be it family members, friends, past partners, current partners. And I would be interested, out of those 3 serious relationships or any of the other relationships, what is the pattern? Because relationships is one of those funny ones that we seem to attract the same thing, same shit, different story, different lessons in shape, or same lesson, sorry, in different shape, ways or forms is what I say often. What is the theme in this? What is the lesson? Because often we will cut the relationship, or we get broken up with, and it's this walking away rather than the communication within the relationship to dive deeper and actually resolve what is going on. Okay, so pregnancies. We did have a very challenging pregnancy that caused the relationship a very intense stress and strain, which we are still recovering from, and there's still resentment about. So interesting, because as I said, I'm just reading this as I go, is that resentment is one of the negative space emotions, but a normal emotion of the heart chakra. And this will have to do with someone. So this all of a sudden becomes something that you can process without having to involve that person in real life, but you can process this on your own and let all of this resentment out rather than holding it into your body, inside of your body. We had to have our son in NICU, in ICU, neonatal ICU, for 10 days. So this can be a big thing. And I talk about birth trauma can come on so many levels. But depending on where you're at, like what is the birth plan you had? What are the expectations you had? And one of the biggest traumas is that the birth did not go the way I thought it was going to. And I didn't plan for this because I didn't want to have any intentions on things going wrong. I personally wanted a home birth, but I did have a plan for a hospital and even a C-section. It was a very small part of my plan. But these are all things which, you know, some people don't process this until many decades later when their kids are now adults. But yeah, when both of you are ready, you're both going to have different stories and different memories around this NICU experience and the pregnancy experience. And neither of them are right or wrong, and they both deserve to be processed. But a lot of this is like the expectations, but you could be processing on the nurses, the doctors, your partner, etc. And the great thing is, well, the way I teach it with the release process is you don't have to involve them. But energetically, as a result of you processing your emotions, things can shift because we feed off people's energy. All right, I just asked how many kids. So you have one, and you sort of described the birth. Okay. Anything significant to note in regards to your friendship relationships? Lately, it seems like friendships come and go. I've lost so many friendships because of the bullshit propaganda of the virus, COVID. That is so sad to reflect upon at times. So I find everything that's happened with the COVID pandemic really interesting on so many layers and levels, which I guess I won't fully go into. But yeah, it caused a lot of division within community and friendships and people's choices. And I think it called a lot on people around what are your choices, how grounded do you feel in your decisions, and how willing are you to actually stand up for them. And some people realize their inability to make a decision and back themselves around it, and then having regret for some of the choices that they made, whatever they made. Now, I support people with whatever choice they make, as long as they feel grounded in it and that it stands in their truth. They're able to stand in their truth. Do they have to justify themselves? No. If they want to, they can. But can it come from a place of, this is my decision, I respect yours, I respect mine. I come from a place of love, not a fight. There was a lot of fighting going on for who was right, who was wrong. And my gosh, how things have panned out over the last couple of years, just over 2 years now, is a bit crazy. So, yeah, and as you are continuing to dive into yourself and express yourself, and I know this is your line of work, is that friendships are going to come and go. But what I think is important is, and because some relationship stuff has come up, is that you're not just like burning these relationships. Sometimes it is just having that ability to step into your power, which is sacral chakra, to communicate. Hey, things are going a different way. I still love and respect you. And if we come back together, then so we do. But it is also that trust, because if you've got this kapha excess going on, it can be really hard to let go of these relationships. And for a kapha, but most people who have got an emotional full cup, is to not take it personally. It's to trust the path that you are on, and the universe is constantly going to send us these tests and these challenges to see if we still want to follow that path. And it is the trust that as space is created, another aligned soul is going to come into my life. They're going to cross my path, because we are meant to have this relationship in whatever shape, way, or form we have. So the sadness, I would be processing all of this sadness and these relationships and actually letting them go, but also knowing that they can come back around if you are coming from the right place, if you desire. All right, we are almost finished. Family structure and dynamics. Both mother and father have been married and divorced twice. Oh, I don't know if I understand that dynamics. They got married and got divorced. Or no, they were married, then they got divorced, and then they each got married to some other people and they got divorced. All right, got my head around it. It's like mother's brother's cousin. Like, hang on, I can't keep track of that. So this is sacral chakra, experiencing a divorce, and I would be asking you what age and seeing if I can link it up with any of your other history and onset of the sinusitis or anything else. When did they get divorced, and how did you feel in the midst of this? And then this is sacral chakra. Other sacral chakra stuff would be the partners that they went on to have again. What was your relationship with them? How were you treated as their child in the relationship with this other person? So often things to process around divorce and new partners is, did you approve of these new partners? Did you like them? How were you treated by them? Okay. Then my mum is manic bipolar who lives alone near my brother in Tennessee. My dad has not made any effort to meet his I'm just not going to say the gender, grandbaby, or speak to me in essentially 3 years. I would say that I was brought to this earth to create my own family rather than the blood family that I have in completion. So interesting. Okay, so mum is manic bipolar. You know, if there were any episodes and you know that perhaps it's due to bipolar, is you use whatever processes you use, but this is where I get people to go back, those bipolar incidences, maybe it was the times that she was carried out on a stretcher, is if she was able to communicate, what would you say to her? What would she say back to you? There are actually particular prompts, which I won't dive into, and come to this resolution. And this helps take things away from feeling personal on you, because these things can feel very personal when you experience them. So your brother, I would also just be saying, what is your relationship with your brother? And your dad has not made any effort to meet your grandson, okay, I've just said it, doesn't matter, or speak to you in 3 years. So how does this feel? Was it a conscious choice? Was it just like, we're just not speaking? How did that relationship end? I do also support people that, you know, sometimes they are going to choose to not communicate with their family. And again, how can we go about this in a conscious way? And how can we still process the emotions? Because sometimes it can be this feeling that, oh, once they're out of my life, it'll all be good. And some people think, well, once they're dead, that it'll be fine. But they get hit by a pretty harsh reality that the emotions never leave if they aren't processed. So how does this make you feel? And your child is 1 year old, but you haven't spoken to your dad for 3 years. So there was stuff happening beforehand, but having, like, you saying that he has not met his grandchild, that tells me that your child has brought up another layer, because actually you haven't been speaking to him for 2 years prior to that. So there's stuff to process around this. And then I love this. I would say that I was brought to this earth to create my own family rather than the blood family that I have in completion. So Kapha tendency is a lot to build a tribe and build a community. They love tribe, they love community. And with all the COVID isolation stuff, that was challenging for a lot of predominantly Kapha personality dosha constitutions. Okay, so you did right here. I'm very close with my older brother and my nieces. Great. If it's all good there, good. And then just the last bit, anything you haven't shared, I'm very curious what your process looks like. I look forward to the results. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for letting me share this on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I do enjoy diving into one's history. And yeah, I am curious to hear what you get out of it. Hopefully you took some notes. You might want to re-listen to this as well. Sometimes you might re-listen to it in months or years' time and hear it in a completely different light, because you are constantly going to be evolving and doing your own work. But I hope that everyone listening to this has also gotten something beneficial out of this, even though this is specific to this person's history. I see it in my groups all the time that someone asks a question and the coaching or the response provided, it helps someone on a different level. So once again, thank you for letting me interpret this history. I really appreciate this opportunity and to publish it publicly on the podcast as well.